Hello everyone and welcome back to Void Space Alpha. My name is Ollie and today I'm going to be continuing my New Year's resolution of trying to get better at painting things. So I'm going to try doing the Slapchop method on this kill team of, in fact I've got the box over here, I can tell you it is the Twistweald. So yeah, got some Sylvaneth here and yeah, I've given it a prime all over in a black spray, couple of nice fine passes there and let it dry next to a radiator. And just to build up the Slapchop scheme, I'm just going to dry brush it over with a grey, which is actually GW's Dawnstone. So let's get that grey thrown on there. And yeah, do you know what? I've enjoyed painting so far this year. I realise it is, at time of recording, only the 3rd of January, but yeah, I've painted a Nighthaunt kill team so far. You can see that video on the channel. So yeah, maybe I am becoming a person that likes painting. I'm going to get a bit more Dawnstone on my brush there, just so I can work it into the bristles and get a decent bit of a deposit going on there. I find these makeup brushes work a lot better for dry brushing because they're soft and these models are quite breakable. I mean, you kind of find that with Kill Team and Warcry and Underworlds and all that stuff, that the models are a lot more dynamically posed, I think is the correct term. I'm just going to adjust my light there a bit. So yeah, they're a bit more spindly and a bit more breakable. But look, there's the grey on. Decent coverage everywhere. And yeah, you can still see the black left in the recesses. So what I'm going to do is let him dry, come back and do the white. Right, we gave him 5 minutes to dry, so now we have our, well, dried miniature, and we're going to chuck on some white scar, again doing the old dry brush. I'm going to use the other end of my wife's makeup brush here. They are the optimal dry brushing brushes for choice, definitely. So let's make sure that you haven't got a lot on the brush. I'm just going to much lighter this time. You can see I'm barely putting any pressure on at all. I'm just letting that paint deposit on the very, very raised surfaces. And there we have our fully dry brushed miniature with his grey and his white layers on. So yeah, hopefully the contrast paint is going to take nicely to these guys. And these guys in the, what was it called? The Twistweald box. They've got this like underbody, right? Which is usually like a blue, like an athematic blue or a Nihilakh oxide type thing. But I've been painting my Nighthaunts and they've got a lot of Nihilakh oxide on them. So I want them to be just visually a bit different. So I'm going to give them a different body tone just so they stand out a bit on the board. So the first paint we're going to be using is Majos Purple. There we are. I'm just going to pop it open a bit there and get some onto our palette, giving it a good shake and using a moist brush. So let's get a bit onto the palette there, like so. And I'm just going to go around, and again, one of the things I'm trying to get better at this year is my brush control, and I'm just going to base coat the body parts so they are in this like pinky purple color. So let's go and do that now. And look, this is I'm not a professional painter by any stretch of the imagination, so if by some miracle you have clicked on this video, your tips and your help and all of that great stuff is going to be hugely welcome. So please do leave that down below. Yeah, but let's just go around and get this color on here. I'm trying really hard not to get it anywhere that isn't where it's meant to be, if that makes sense, because I want to really practice my brush control and minimize the amount of tidy up and clean up that I have to do at a later stage. I also don't want to throw it on and pull it on, so there's that to consider as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the entire model, get this paint on, and we'll come back and see how it looks. And there we are, the Majos Purple is on our miniature there. Let me just rinse my brush, and you know what, I think it looks okay. I think the what was I talking about? The dry brushing, the Slapchop dry brushing is paying off a bit there, especially in the back where it's a lot darker than it is in the front. But I think they're going to look good with that colour, so we can get rid of our Majos purple for now, and I'm going to move straight on to a colour that you might not think would be good for this, and I honestly don't know, this is my first time trying, but Skeleton Horde. So I'm going to use Skeleton Horde, and I've seen this on a couple of videos on YouTube. I'm going to use Skeleton Horde as the base colour for all of the tree parts, which is pretty much the entirety of the miniature. Areas that I want to avoid are going to be like these branches and whatnot, so let's try our best to avoid that. But I'm just going to go around the entire miniature. Anything that's made out of natural wood is going to get a base coat of Skeleton Horde, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that it's not overly pooling in any one area. I mean, a bit of pooling's okay because you do want the shadows and the contrast, right? But you don't want it to look like it's just fully black because you've slapped it on as quickly as humanly possible. So yeah, let me go around and base the entirety of this model in Skeleton Horde, and we'll come back and we'll see what he looks like. And there we have all of the Skeleton Horde on there, and I think you'll agree that it's actually, I mean, I say it's all on there, but I've just realised I've missed a little bit just down here on the back of his foot, quite a few places actually. So I'll quickly just, while we're talking about the next step, I'll just cover that up. But yeah, I think you'll agree that it is a much nicer paint for wood than one would first expect with a name like Skeleton Horde. I mean, it is a fantastic skeleton paint as well. I think it's all in the wash stage that kind of brings it together. Anyways, next step for us is, while that Skeleton Horde is still just a little bit wet, we're going to grab our palette. I'm going to put my wet palette on screen here, and I'm running out of a little bit of space here, but I'm going to do a 1-to-1 mix of, so let's grab some Skeleton Horde, there's a bit of space there, let's chuck it on. So 1 part Skeleton Horde, and then 1 part, what's this, Iyanden Yellow, there we are. So I'm just going to, oh, brand new pot, how exciting. Just going to grab a brush load of Iyanden Yellow. Get a decent amount on there, probably not enough, that's about right. And then let's just mix those two colours together. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this colour, rinse my brush so I've got good brush control. There we are. So I'm going to use this colour whilst it's still a bit wet on the Skeleton Horde to just blend in those branches and just give a bit of variation of colour on there. Make sure you're flipping the model around to get all of the different areas, because you want it to be blended in quite significantly to those areas, and you don't want to miss any glaring white bits that you've missed. So let's make sure that we get them all now. So yeah, I'm just going to go around the model and make sure that we are getting all of those leafy bits in that Skeleton Horde Iyanden Yellow mixture, and then we'll come back and see what he looks like. Right, I think you'll agree that that looks pretty decent. There's a good variance of colour there, like a nice little subtle change of colour, which is nice. Now, before that's completely dried, we're going to want to grab some Magradroth Flame, and we're going to thin that down with a couple of parts of contrast medium. So 1 part Magradroth Flame to 2 parts contrast medium. And if you haven't got contrast medium, you can use water, I suppose, just use a little bit less. But yeah, let me get my 2 parts contrast medium on my palette and mix those two together. We do want to make quite a thin glazy colour here. Let me just get just a fraction more, I think. There we go, that'll be good. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that colour between anywhere where that Iyanden Yellow skeleton bone mixture meets the Skeleton Horde. I just called it skeleton bone, I meant skeleton horde, you guys know what I'm talking about. We're just going to put this orange colour in, just blending it in while it's still wet, just to give it a bit of an interesting orange tinge as we go round. So let's just get that sort of halfway up the stems, feels about right. It's hard to tell because again this is my first time doing this, and yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? I don't know what it's going to look like when it's dried, but we'll give it a go. Let's just make sure it is on every single piece, like so. That's going to be a tricky bit above his head. Just clear that bit off his head. And yeah, I think broadly speaking, that is that. I mean, it looks quite stark now. I don't know if you can tell that on the screen, but we'll let him dry fully, and then we'll come back and we'll hit the next step, which is going to be hopefully pretty much the end of this model. We're not far off the end now, so yeah, let's do that. Right, well, that is on the way to drying, so we're just going to leave that as it is and move on to our next step, which is going to be using some contrast paint wildwood. So I'm going to give that a good shake. And one thing about wildwood that I have noticed is that it is very, very dark coming out of the pot. So I'm going to thin it down 50-50 with some contrast medium once again, just to make sure it doesn't go on too dark, which would be very, very beneficial considering I'm actually trying to make an effort with these models. So let's get that mixed up. Bear with me just a second. And yeah, we're going to use this paint just to pick out any of the darker sort of wood panels, as it were. So I'll grab the model and show you where I'm thinking here. So I'm thinking sort of like these raised areas, like so. So yeah, and again, because it's 50-50 washed down with the medium, it almost goes on kind of like a glaze. So it just makes those darker bits of wood darker, which is exactly what we want. So I'm just going to be very, very careful to only grab those areas that we want to be darker, which would be hugely beneficial to the overall look and feel of the miniature. And yeah, it looks like it's pretty much just the front facing as well. So yeah, there we are, and we can feather it out towards the edge if we need to as well, so like so. And now there are some areas on this model that I think would benefit massively from a bit of extra detail. So you see like these roots on the face, we could just come in and very gently, very carefully, and where we're failing to get a point on our brush, we can just repoint. We can just very carefully and very gently touch in those roots. So I'm going to go around and do all of those bits. There's also these bits of bark here that are protruding out. I'm just going to give those a base coat as well. And yeah, just generally darken those areas of the model down, and we will come back and see what this chap looks like with everything touched in with that wildwood combination. So yeah, pop back and we'll see what he looks like. There we are. Well, that's the darker parts all boxed in, which is predominantly these areas, this area here, and a few of the higher sort of thigh areas. Everything else is kind of more like a twisty wood, like a knotty wood, which I think looks better in that skeleton bone. We're starting to get some drying on these orange areas now, which I think looks pretty smart. So yeah, I'm okay with the quality of this miniature so far. It's pretty nice. What I'm going to do now is we're going to move on to Mantis Warrior Green. And I've made the decision that that is the colour that I'm going to be using on any weapon blades and what have you. So I'm in two minds about this, because I know I'm definitely going to do this weapon blade here, but it's whether or not I do the fingers here. And we might just have a look and see what that looks like. So let's just box in that weapon blade with our Mantis Warrior Green, just being very careful not to spill it over onto the areas that we've already done. So I'm just going to trace the back edge of that like so. There we go. And the paint that's on there is going to be more than enough, so I'm just going to pull it all towards the edge just to give it well, the edges, wherever you stop the brush stroke, I've found with contrast paint, is where the paint will pull, so it'll give it a nice cool consistent highlight. There we go. So yeah, not a bad model. It's starting to come together, which is pretty cool. Let's give it a little go on these talon blades on the fingers, and we'll just see on one what that looks like, and if it looks a bit crap we can always just take it off. But actually I think that looks pretty good, so I'm going to touch in the rest of these talons and we'll let that dry and come back to it and see what he looks like. I'm pretty sure I just stabbed him in the finger with some more green. So yeah, there we go. Get underneath as well, because somebody picks up the model and it's not done underneath, it'll look weird. So yeah, there we are. So far so good, I think. We'll let him dry, come back and do the next step. And there he is with all the washes dried and a quick base thrown on. It's just some stone and mud with a dry brush of Rakarth flesh and yeah, a quick varnish. And do you know what? I think, if I'm being really honest, it's probably one of the better models that I've ever done, which is saying something. Yeah, so quite enjoying this Slapchop method of painting. Thank you very much if you've gotten this far into the video. Please do continue to like, subscribe, comment, do all that great stuff. Popping up on your screen now will be some other videos that I hope you enjoy. Please do check them out. There is also a Discord link down below where you can share all of your hobby stuff if you so desire. There is no payment wall. You do not need to be a channel member or a Patreon or anything like that. But yeah, I'd appreciate it. So thank you very much. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.